The fluorescent lights of First National Bank cast a harsh glow over everything. I'd always hated these lights. They made everyone look sickly, highlighting every wrinkle, every imperfection. At 65, I had plenty of those to showcase. My son Michael sat beside me, his leg bouncing nervously under the mahogany desk as we waited for the account manager. His expensive cologne couldn't quite mask the smell of cigarettes that clung to him, despite his claims of having quit last year. "Mom, please try to understand," Michael said, leaning toward me. "This is just to make things simpler for everyone. You're getting older, and Dad's been gone for 2 years now. We need to think about the future." I nodded absently, my fingers tracing the worn edge of my purse, the last birthday gift from Robert before the cancer took him. The leather was soft, cracked in places from daily use. Like me, showing its age but still functional, thank you very much. Miss Winters is. The account manager returned with a stack of papers. Her crimson nails clicked against the surface as she arranged them neatly in front of us. "So, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson," she began, before I could correct her. "These are the documents to transfer the accounts into the joint management structure we discussed. As I mentioned, this will allow your son to help manage your finances and make decisions when needed." Michael smiled at her, that charming smile that had gotten him out of trouble since he was 7 years old. "It's just to make things easier, Mom," he repeated, sliding the papers toward me. I reached for my reading glasses, perched them on my nose, and began scanning the documents. The legal jargon swam before my eyes, but after 42 years working as a school secretary, I'd developed a knack for cutting through bureaucratic language. That's when I saw it, or rather didn't see it. My name, Margaret Wilson, was nowhere on the ownership documents. The accounts that Robert and I had built over 50 years of marriage, our savings, our investments, the money from selling the family hardware store, all of it was being transferred solely to Michael's name. "There seems to be a mistake," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "My name isn't listed as an account holder anymore." Michael placed his hand over mine, a gesture that once comforted me, but now felt oddly restraining. "That's the point, Mom. You won't have to worry about any of this anymore. I'll take care of everything." The room suddenly felt colder. The 457,802.63 that represented our life's work, the down payment for our first home in Oakwood Heights back in '82. The college fund that put Michael through Northwestern, the careful investments Robert had made over decades, all of it would no longer be mine. "I don't think I'm ready for that," I said, removing my hand from beneath his. "I'm perfectly capable of managing my own finances." Something flashed across Michael's face. Irritation? Perhaps, or was it something darker? It disappeared quickly, replaced by that same patient smile he'd been using with me lately, the one that made me feel like a child. "Mom, we talked about this. After you paid that scammer last month." "It was a mistake," I cut in sharply. "One mistake. I got most of it back. And I've learned my lesson." The $2,300 I'd lost to what turned out to be a fake Medicare supplement plan still stung, especially because Michael had never let me forget it. One error in judgment and suddenly I was incompetent? Ms. Winters shifted uncomfortably in her seat, clearly sensing the tension. "Perhaps you two need more time to discuss this. We don't have to finalize anything today." Michael's jaw tightened momentarily before he forced another smile. "No need. Mom's just a little confused sometimes. It's been harder for her since Dad passed." The way he spoke about me as if I weren't sitting right there made my blood boil. I'd raised this boy, nursed him through chickenpox and heartbreaks, worked extra hours to ensure he had everything he needed. Now he was treating me like I was already gone. "I'm not signing these," I said, pushing the papers away. "Not today. I need time to think." Michael's expression hardened. "Mom, Sarah and I have already made arrangements based on this. The kids' private school tuition is due next month, and we were counting on being able to—" He stopped abruptly, perhaps realizing he'd said too much. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. The renovations on their already massive house in Lake Forest, the new Mercedes in the driveway, the private school for Emma and Jack when the public schools in their district were among the best in Illinois. My own son was planning to use my retirement money Robert and I had scrimped and saved for decades, to fund his lavish lifestyle. "I think we're done here," I said. Gathering my purse and standing up, my knees protested, that darned arthritis, but I ignored the pain. "Thank you for your time, Miss Winters." The drive home was silent. Michael insisted on driving me, though my license was still perfectly valid. I watched the familiar streets of Chicago pass by, the same city where I'd lived my entire life. We crossed through neighborhoods that had transformed over decades, some for better, some for worse. Passing Loyola University reminded me of the evening classes I'd taken there while working full-time, earning my associate's degree in business administration. Robert had watched the kids those nights, never once complaining. When we pulled up to my modest bungalow in Rogers Park, the home we'd downsized to after Robert retired, Michael finally spoke. "You're making a mistake, Mom. I'm only trying to help you." I looked at my son, really looked at him. The designer watch, the tailored suit, the carefully styled hair that hid the first signs of thinning. When had he become this person? This stranger who saw his aging mother as an obstacle, or worse, an opportunity. "I think I need some time, Michael. I'll call you next week." Inside my home, I locked the door and leaned against it, finally allowing the tears to come. The house creaked around me, settling in for the evening just as it had done every night for the 15 years we'd lived here. Photos lined the walls. Michael's graduation, Sarah and Michael's wedding, the grandkids' birthdays. My life displayed in frozen moments. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea in the kitchen where Robert and I had shared thousands of meals. The worn Formica countertops had been on our someday list to replace, but somehow there were always more important things. Michael's braces, college tuition, helping him with the down payment on his first condo. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my phone and dialed a number I rarely used. "Lisa, it's Mom. Do you have a minute to talk?" My daughter's voice came through, surprised but warm. Unlike her brother, Lisa had never been the successful one in conventional terms. After 2 years at community college, she'd moved to Portland, Oregon, where she ran a modestly successful bookstore. Michael had always looked down on her life choices, but I'd come to admire her authenticity. "What's wrong, Mom? You sound upset." I didn't realize I was crying again until I tried to speak. "I think your brother is trying to take my money." The silence on the other end lasted only a moment before Lisa's voice, suddenly steel hard, came through. "Tell me everything." And so I did. About the meeting at the bank, about Michael's extravagant lifestyle, about the feeling I'd been having for months that my son saw me as a burden rather than his mother. "I'm coming home," Lisa said immediately. "I'll be on the first flight tomorrow." "No. Honey, you don't need to." "Yes, I do. And Mom? Don't sign anything. Don't talk to Michael again until I'm there. Promise me." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table until well past midnight, the tea long cold. The house felt emptier than usual, the silence heavier. I thought about calling my sister Jean in Florida, but decided against it. At 70, she had her own health concerns to worry about. Instead, I went to the spare bedroom that served as my home office and pulled out the accordion folder where Robert and I had always kept our important documents. Insurance policies, property deeds, account statements, all meticulously organized. Robert had been so careful about these things, always ensuring we were prepared. "We have to protect each other, Maggie," he used to say. "And after we're gone, we have to make sure the kids are taken care of equally." Equally. That had always been our agreement. Everything split evenly between Michael and Lisa when we were gone. But if Michael got control now, I found the business card for Robert's attorney, Franklin Weiss. He'd helped us draw up our wills years ago. Perhaps it was time to pay him a visit. Sleep eluded me that night. I kept seeing the look in Michael's eyes at the bank, not concern for my well-being, but frustration at the obstacle I represented. When had I become an inconvenience to my own son? The boy who used to crawl into our bed during thunderstorms, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose broken hearts I'd mended with cookies and patience. Morning came, and with it, a string of text messages from Michael. "Mom, I hope you've thought about what we discussed. Sarah and I are just trying to help you. The kids were asking about you. They want to know when Grandma is coming for dinner." Using the grandchildren, that was a low blow, even for him. I loved Emma and Jack fiercely, but I wouldn't be manipulated, not even with them. I texted back simply, "I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk." Then I called a cab to take me to Franklin Weiss's office downtown. Despite Michael's insistence, I was still perfectly capable of getting around Chicago on my own. I'd been navigating this city since before he was born. Franklin had aged since I'd last seen him, his hair now completely silver, his face more lined, but his handshake was firm and his eyes sharp as ever. "Mrs. Wilson, it's been too long," he said, ushering me into his office with its impressive view of Lake Michigan. I was deeply sorry to hear about Robert's passing. "Thank you, Franklin. And please, it's Margaret." He smiled kindly. "Margaret it is. Now what brings you here today?" I explained the situation with Michael, watching Franklin's expression grow increasingly grave. "Unfortunately, what you're describing is something I see more and more these days," he said when I finished. "Elder financial exploitation is the term, though I hesitate to apply it when family is involved, but the pattern is similar." "Elder?" I repeated, bristling slightly at the term. "I'm only 65. Franklin smiled. "Forgive me, but regardless of what we call it, what your son was attempting to do is legally questionable at best. Without your informed consent or any demonstration of incapacity on your part, transferring your assets solely to his name would be improper. So he can't take my money without my permission." "Correct. But we should take steps to protect you further." Franklin leaned forward. "I recommend we update your estate planning documents immediately. We can establish a living trust with specific provisions that would make it much more difficult for anyone to access your assets without proper cause." We spent the next 2 hours going over options. By the time I left his office, I had appointments scheduled for the following week to execute new documents, including powers of attorney that named Lisa as my primary agent for both financial and healthcare decisions, with my sister Jean as the backup. "And Margaret," Franklin said as his assistant showed me out, "consider setting up a meeting with your bank to put additional security measures on your accounts. Perhaps require dual signatures for large withdrawals." The weight that had been crushing my chest since yesterday seemed to lighten somewhat. I had a plan now, steps to take to protect myself. On the cab ride home, I called Lisa to update her. "My flight lands at O'Hare at 11:40 tomorrow," she said. "I've already arranged time off from the store. I can stay for at least 2 weeks." "You don't have to do that, honey." "Yes, I do. And Mom, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Dad would be too." The mention of Robert brought fresh tears to my eyes. How I missed his solid presence, his unwavering support. He would have been devastated by Michael's behavior. When the cab pulled up to my house, I was surprised to see Michael's car in the driveway. My heart began to race. I hadn't expected to face him again so soon, certainly not without Lisa present. I paid the driver and slowly made my way to my front door, which opened before I could reach for my keys. Michael stood there, his expression a mixture of concern and irritation. Where have you been? I've been calling for hours. I straightened my spine, summoning my best principal's office voice from my days as school secretary. I wasn't aware I needed to report my whereabouts to you, Michael. I moved past him into my own home, setting my purse down on the entryway table with deliberate calmness despite my racing heart. Mom, I've been worried sick. You weren't answering your phone. You weren't here. Anything could have happened. My phone was in my purse. I was at an appointment. I didn't owe him details, not anymore. Michael ran a hand through his hair in frustration. What appointment? With who? That's my business. I moved to the kitchen, filling the kettle for tea, a ritual that helped steady my nerves. Michael followed me. This is exactly why we need to make these arrangements. Mom, you're becoming forgetful, secretive. It's not safe for you to be managing these things on your own anymore. The kettle slammed onto the burner with more force than I intended. I am not forgetful or secretive. I am a grown woman making my own choices about my life and my money. Our money, Michael corrected, his voice taking on an edge I rarely heard. Dad would have wanted me to look after you and the family finances. Your father, I said, emphasizing each word, wanted everything split equally between you and your sister after we were both gone. Not a day sooner. Michael scoffed. Lisa, she can barely manage her own finances. That failing bookstore of hers is one bad month away from bankruptcy. That's not true, and you know it. Your sister lives within her means, which is more than I can say for you lately. The words escaped before I could stop them. Michael's face darkened. What's that supposed to mean? The new addition to your house, the car, private school tuition. Are those the expenses you were planning to cover with my retirement money? For a moment, something like shame flickered across his face, quickly replaced by defensive anger. We're family. Families help each other. Dad would have wanted his grandchildren to have the best opportunities. Don't you dare use your father to justify this. My voice shook with emotion. Robert worked 60 hours a week for 40 years at that hardware store to build our savings. He missed ball games and school plays to provide for us. He would never have approved of taking money from my care to fund your lifestyle. My lifestyle? Michael laughed bitterly. You make it sound like I'm some trust fund kid. I work hard for my family. And I'm not family, is that it? The question hung in the air between us. The kettle began to whistle, its high-pitched sound filling the tense silence. Neither of us moved to turn it off. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice lower. Lisa called you, didn't she? She's always been jealous that I was the one who stayed close to home. The one who's been here taking care of you. Taking care of me? I echoed incredulously, finally turning off the stove. By trying to take control of my money behind my back? It wasn't behind your back. We were at the bank together. After you'd already arranged everything with the bank manager. After you'd already made plans for my money. Michael's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it, then back at me. Sarah's wondering where I am. We need to finish this conversation, Mom, but I have to go now. Lisa arrives tomorrow, I said, watching his expression carefully. I think we should all talk then. Something like panic flashed in his eyes. Lisa's coming here? Why? This doesn't concern her. It concerns all of us. This is family, Michael, like you said. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded stiffly. Fine. But Mom, I really am just trying to help. You'll understand that eventually. After he left, I sank into a kitchen chair, my hands trembling so badly I couldn't even pour my tea. The confrontation had left me drained but somehow stronger. For the first time since Robert died, I felt like I was standing on my own 2 feet, making my own decisions rather than being swept along by grief and loneliness. I spent the rest of the day preparing for Lisa's arrival, changing sheets in the guest room and stocking the fridge with her favorite foods. The simple domestic tasks helped calm my mind. That evening, I called Jean to fill her in on everything. I always thought Michael was Robert's mini-me, Jean said, her Florida drawl more pronounced after years away from Chicago. But Robert would never have done something like this. I know, I sighed. That's what hurts the most. Somehow I failed in raising him to be the man his father was. Nonsense, Jean snapped. You didn't fail. Michael made his own choices as an adult. And from what you're telling me, Sarah might be influencing him too. I hadn't wanted to think about my daughter-in-law's role in all this. But John had a point. Sarah had always had expensive tastes, even before they could afford them. The 3-carat diamond engagement ring that Michael had gone into debt for. The wedding at the Drake Hotel that cost more than our first house. The country club membership they maintained despite the steep annual fees. Maybe, I admitted. But Michael's a grown man. He makes his own decisions. Well, I'm glad you're standing up for yourself, Maggie. And if you need me there too, just say the word. Let's see how it goes with Lisa first. But thank you, Jean. That night I pulled out old photo albums, flipping through pictures of Michael growing up. His first steps, holding Robert's fingers, his high school graduation, beaming in his cap and gown. The day we dropped him off at Northwestern, his expression a mix of excitement and terror. When had things changed? When had money become more important to him than family? The next morning I took a taxi to O'Hare to meet Lisa's flight. Seeing her walk through the arrival gate brought tears to my eyes. At 38, she looked so much like I had at her age. The same chestnut hair, the same determined set to her jaw. She dropped her carry-on bag and wrapped me in a fierce hug. "Mom," she whispered, "I've missed you so much." The drive back to Rogers Park was filled with Lisa's stories about Portland. Her bookstore, her girlfriend Tara, and their rescue greyhound Fitzgerald. It felt so good to laugh again, to feel that easy connection that had always existed between us, despite the physical distance. "Michael's coming over this evening," I told her as we pulled onto my street, "with Sarah and the kids." Lisa's expression hardened slightly. "Good. I have some things to say to my brother. Lisa, I don't want this to turn into a bigger family rift than it already is. The children shouldn't see us fighting." "I know, Mom. I'll be civil, but I won't let him bully you either." We spent the afternoon catching up properly. Lisa helped me organize some of Robert's things that I still hadn't been able to face sorting through. His collection of vintage tools, his beloved record albums, the sweaters that still somehow held his scent. "Dad would be so mad at Michael right now," Lisa said softly as we folded Robert's favorite cardigan. "He always said taking care of you was his most important job. And he did it wonderfully," I smiled through tears, "for 47 years. At precisely 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Michael, Sarah, and the children stood on the porch. Emma, at 10, immediately rushed forward to hug me, while Jack, 13, hung back with the awkwardness of early adolescence. "Grandma, I missed you," Emma exclaimed. "Did you make snickerdoodles?" I laughed, hugging her tightly. "Check the cookie jar in the kitchen, sweetheart." As the children disappeared inside, Michael's gaze locked with Lisa's. The tension was palpable. "Lisa," he said stiffly, "this is a surprise." "Is it?" Lisa replied coolly. "Mom told you I was coming." Sarah stepped forward, immaculate as always in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Lisa's monthly rent. "Margaret, it's good to see you. Michael's been so worried." "Let's all sit down," I suggested, gesturing to the living room. "The kids can watch TV in the den while we talk." Once the children were settled with cookies and a movie, the 4 of us sat in the living room. The silence was thick with unspoken accusations. "So," Michael finally began, "I assume Lisa's here because you told her about our discussion at the bank." "Our mother told me you tried to remove her name from her own accounts," Lisa corrected. "That's not a discussion, Michael. That's attempted theft." Sarah gasped. How dare you? Michael has only ever wanted what's best for your mother. Then why didn't he include her name on the new accounts? Lisa demanded. Why was he making plans for her money without her knowledge? Michael leaned forward, his voice tense. Mom's getting older. After that scammer incident, I was concerned about her ability to manage large sums of money. I was protecting her. By taking control of everything, I interjected. That's not protection. Michael, that's control. Mom. Michael's voice softened, taking on that patronizing tone that had become so familiar lately. You know how these things go. Elderly people often become targets. I was just trying to prevent that. I am not elderly, I stated firmly. I'm 65, I'm in good health. My mind is sharp, and I'm perfectly capable of managing my own finances with appropriate safeguards. What safeguards? Sarah asked skeptically. I've met with Dad's attorney, I explained. I'm updating my estate planning documents and setting up a living trust. I'm also implementing additional security measures at the bank. Michael's expression darkened. You went to Weiss without telling me. Just like you went to the bank manager without telling me about removing my name from the accounts, I countered. The room fell silent again. Sarah fidgeted with her wedding ring, a newer, larger diamond than the original, I noticed. Another upgrade they somehow afforded on Michael's salary as a marketing executive. I think what we all need to acknowledge, Lisa said carefully, is that Mom is entitled to make her own decisions about her money. It's not an inheritance yet, Michael. It's her life savings to use as she sees fit. Of course it is, Sarah said quickly. We never suggested otherwise. Then why remove her name from the accounts? Lisa pressed. It was a misunderstanding, Michael muttered. The bank manager must have made a mistake with the paperwork. Lisa and I exchanged glances. We both knew that wasn't true. Michael, I said gently, I need you to be honest with me. Are you having financial problems? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Not problems. Exactly. Just pressures. The kids' school, the house renovation, it all adds up. So you thought you'd use Mom's retirement money to fill the gaps? Lisa stated flatly. It wasn't like that, Michael protested, but his face flushed with the lie. Sarah suddenly stood up. I think we should go. This isn't productive. No, I said firmly. We need to clear the air. Michael, Lisa, and I have discussed this, and I've made some decisions. I'm establishing a trust with specific provisions for how my assets can be used. Lisa will be my primary power of attorney with Aunt Zhang as backup.